Hi, I'm Lucy Baker, the Senior Communications Manager at Guilford Press, and I'm so happy to be here today with Charles Barrett, the author of our new book, Social Justice in Schools, a Framework for Equity in Education. Charles, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So congratulations on the publication of your book. Can you talk a little bit about why you wrote it, what the main message is, and who should read it?
Sure. So I'll start with the last question. Every single person who is concerned about education for children. So I would say if you're a teacher, if you're a grad student in school psychology, school counseling, school social work, administration, but anyone who's working for children or with children, this book is relevant to you, for you. If you're an administrator, working in schools, you're a principal, a superintendent, director, supervisor, it's broad enough that it really reaches all educators. So I would say that I'm a school psychologist by training. I'm in year 15 in my practice, and certainly that's important to me, but it really is broad enough for any educator who's interested in really serving kids directly and promoting more equitable outcomes, but also influencing policy and expectations for all of us that we can do better by children. So that's who the book is for. I wrote the book because a lot of my speaking and writing over the years has really focused on social justice issues in education. So through assessment, through counseling. So it really provides a framework for how do we embed socially just practices in whatever our role is. So in instruction, in counseling for our mental health providers, and assessment for those of us who evaluate children for disabilities and different concerns. How do we embed principles so that we can promote more equitable outcomes for all young people? And I balance the framework with not being too prescriptive. So I'm not trying to have a checklist approach, but it really just gives us a way of thinking about our respective roles as educators, and how again do we embed principles, a way of thinking, so that we can promote more equitable outcomes for young people.
Okay, great. Increasing access, opportunity, and equitable outcomes for students is something that many teachers want, but not everybody knows how to go about putting that into action. So
Sure.
how can your book help with that?
So I think that the book definitely gives some concrete examples. For example, I think in chapter 1 or chapter 2 with a vignette about a couple students, and I follow those students throughout the book. So I highlight how these principles can relate to real students, real children that you might serve in your respective school or school district. So I think that broadly speaking, if we can think beyond the individual child, for example, we like to be child-centered, and I totally agree with that philosophy, but sometimes being child-centered is looking beyond the child at what's happening around children, so we can maybe be more responsive to those issues, those concerns, and in turn, we end up being more effective with the individual student. So, for example, I want people to think about school funding. I want them to think about curriculum that we might be providing to students. I want those who are like me, like school psychologists, think about IQ tests and achievement tests, the ones that we might be using or selecting for various groups. I want to think about who do we refer for evaluations? Who do we talk about that needs more support? Again, whatever your role might be, EL teacher, SPED teacher, all these questions are relevant. And some of those questions might have less to do with the individual student, but the circumstances in which those children have been born into or might be educated in. So I want us to be reflective about our process and about our practices, and think about what can the adults do better or more effectively for children that we are responsible for caring for and for educating.
Right. You talk so much in your book about what's critical to social justice so much as families,
Mm-hmm.
and families, empowering families to be their children's best advocates. Can you give an example from how teachers and for how teachers and administrators can empower families in this way?
Sure. So I would go back to the big A word that I used in the book, and that's access. So, as a school based administrator, as a teacher, as an educator, how do you provide your families with access to information so that they can be more empowered and effective advocates for their children? So, I think about how schools can be very complicated places, and we get it because we work in school, but this alphabet soup of FBAs and IEPs and all these other
Mhm.
terms that we throw around, those are not intuitive to families who might not live or work in this world. So how do we make information accessible to individuals? So how do we bring families in and explain things in ways that are understandable? I think about being proactive in that. We invite families for back to school fairs, or we go to where families are in the community to again provide them with information. We've heard this phrase that knowledge is power, but I
Mhm.
would say access to information is key. Not a lot of knowledge out there, but if people
Yes.
can't access it, then they're not empowered to really be their child's most informed advocate. So providing access to information is really central to that. Um, and then being open to the family having a different point of view from
Okay.
you as an educator. So sometimes I think that we can become offended as educators when families don't agree with our proposed recommendations or what we think is in their child's best interest. And you might be right, but I think that part of the family exercising their rights is to know that they understand what's at stake, they understand what they're saying no to or saying yes to, and then us as schools respecting that decision that might not be in line with what we have proposed. So access to information is certainly key, but also respecting the family's right to disagree if that's their choice.
Yeah, that's so important. I want to zoom back for a minute and talk not just about specific things teachers can do, but things that entire school districts can
Mm-hmm.
do to improve equitable outcomes for students. Can you explain one or two things that can be done on like a broad scale level?
Sure. So I think that when we hear the word policy, some of us think, well, I'm not a policy maker, or that's not my job to write policy. And you might be correct. Those are things for maybe your senior staff, directors and superintendents and cabinet members. But I think we should break down the word policy to something that's a bit more manageable and
Mhm.
also appropriate for all of us. And I would say expectation. So if the policy in the country is that you drive a certain speed limit, that is the expectation, because you don't do that, then there are consequences for not following the speed limit. So I
Right.
think in whatever role you're in, whenever you're supervising people as a principal or as a director, supervisor in different offices, what do you expect from your staff that allows them to promote more equitable access or equitable outcomes for young people? So there's a part of the book I talk about gifted assessment or gifted eligibility for students, and one of the things that we can do is to universally provide the opportunity for all students to be considered for gifted placement. In some places, there's a referral process that's driven by teachers or driven by families. But what if we allowed every child to be considered for that? And then we narrow down the criteria as we go along. Just again, giving the chance for everyone to still have that opportunity to be considered is a great way to improve access. I think about, in an MTSS framework, uh,
Okay.
about RTI and PBIS, and that's in
Right.
the book as well. But I think from whatever you're doing, if it's RTI for academics, PBIS for behavior, I think about the importance of solid tier 1 instruction, or
Mhm.
effective tier 1 or core instruction for all your students. And how we do that is we look at how do various students or student groups respond to tier 1 instruction. And if most of them are not successful in that, then I think that it's also on us to think about, are we really meeting the needs of our students? Again, it's not prescriptive. I won't say that there's one curriculum out there or one program that's going to work for everyone, but I do think the work that we have to do as adults is to figure out who are our students and how do we meet their needs effectively. So certainly thinking about what's available to all kids, be it academically, behaviorally, social, emotionally. If that's not meeting the needs of most of your students, then it might be an opportunity for you to think about how we could modify that to be more responsive to our students.
Right, right. Okay, the last question is just that we'd love to learn a little bit more about you. What do you do for fun when you're not working? And is there a next project that you're particularly passionate or excited about?
Sure. So I'm often working because I love what I do and it rarely feels like work. So aside from being an administrator now supporting psychologists, I do some adjunct teaching. I still do some school-based work because I love it that much. So school psychology is fun for me. I really enjoy teaching and writing. But outside of that, I love the water. So my wife and I like to take some trips to the water and the beach and kind of hang out on kayaks and sail when we can. Love to read. I guess I'll say I like to watch HGTV. Weekend pleasure. As far as next projects, I'm always thinking about things. In the last chapter in the book, chapter 8 or chapter 9, I talk about this idea of focusing on the fence.
Right.
I unpack that a little bit in the book. So I'm thinking about building on that idea and basically thinking about the systemic barriers that exist in society. Not any one person's fault, but things like racism and poverty and trauma, ineffective curricula and community violence, all these things that affect children. I'm thinking about some type of work that would describe those fences, but also provide some actionable steps that we can take to advocate to deconstruct or take down those fences in order to provide more equitable access for young people. So that's kind of my latest brainstorm that I'm thinking about doing, and we'll see where that goes. But that's been a real passion of mine, just thinking about what can we do concretely to really take down these fences and really promote better access and opportunity for young people.
Well, I'm sure.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I'm sure that you will do a fabulous job, and your book is
you're kind. You're
so
kind.
impactful. And one of the things I like so much about it is how accessible it is. Like, I'm not a teacher. I don't work in schools, but I read and understand and can take away things from your book. So I really think, anybody that works in a school should have it on their desk.
It's interactive, there's questions to reflect on. So
Yeah.
those are personal, for you, but they're also great for small group, for your graduate courses or your staff PD. So I didn't want people to just read the book and have a bunch of information, but really reflect upon what they're doing and how we can all improve to do better for young people. So I'm grateful for that feedback, that you can read it as a non-educator and still benefit from the content.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.